Hi, I'm Martin Slade Jr., and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Beyond. Hi, I'm Martin Slade, the executive producer of Beyond the Beyond. Our subject today is a little bit different than what we've been speaking about previously. We've spoken about the astral plane, UFO phenomenon, and a host of other things pertaining to things that we don't generally discuss or even acknowledge. But you know, sometimes we talk about things of the past and ancient history and ancient knowledge. Well, let's be more contemporary. And at the same time, let's also think in terms of being futuristic. Futuristic meaning, let's look in a very positive way towards our future, beyond the beyond. Today's subject will be transhumans, or transhumanism. Now, this is relatively a new term that has not been used quite often, and you may not be familiar with it. But transhumanism is an attempt to improve the human condition of humanity by using advanced technology. And you have to come to some sort of supposition as to, well, he's going to be talking about transhumanism. Well, the word trans meaning moving from one to another, and humanism, of course, we're a human, sentient life. And now we're moving in a technological stage in our society where we have bionic eyes and limbs, and we've reconstructed different parts of our organs, such as liver, heart, and other parts of our bodies. Well, what does it mean now to be human, now that we're moving in a stage where we're almost becoming bionic, like the television show that was seen, I think it was the 1970s, the $6 Million Man? and he was a composite of many different technological innovations that allowed him to run at very fast speeds, to leap over, buildings and a number of superhuman feats. And at that time, that was considered to be a little bit illogical. But nowadays, these things can be done. Now that some of the veterans are coming home, they have things such as prosthetics, artificial arms and legs and limbs, and there's a lot of reparations done to their bodies to allow them to try to function at a somewhat normal life. And what does this mean to the human species now that we are now moving into a situation where we are becoming stronger, faster, and even to the point where our intellect is advancing as well? What does this do to us? How does this change our world, society, and cultural and religious beliefs? Will it increase our intelligence by downloading large amounts of information, by doing direct cranial high-speed networking directly to our brains? And if so, if we do these things, how does that affect us in terms of our education? How fundamentally does it change our belief systems? These things are going to happen because we are now moving further into the space and the universe in an attempt to go to very far distant places, such as Mars and Jupiter. And of course, I can understand robotics now play a great deal of influence in our space age technologies, and well, it looks that's the way that humanity is going. We're going more towards becoming more robotic, and it has its consequences. It has its blessings too. Religion. If we continue to replace all of the parts of our bodies, well, maybe we might get to the point where we could live thousands, if not hundreds of years. I think, what effect does this have on our religious beliefs? In terms of an eternal soul, or being a sentient life being, being judged after we pass from the world. Does this change the way we think about religion, and does it change the way we think about God? And if becoming more robotic, does it diminish our destinies? Does it diminish our appreciation for having natural biological compartments that we're so used to functioning as sentient beings? In other words, when you have an artificial liver and kidney and heart, skeletal system, and all these other components, how does this affect us physically, mentally, intellectually? Let's take the economy, for instance. If we do become more technologically advanced and we become more bionic, and we become more complacent and dependent upon technology, how does this play in terms of our economy? Who will be controlling that economy? Who will be controlling the government? Will we have a centralized government where we're all plugged in and to a system that controls us, or the mechanics of our body or our mind? Do we become a computerized utopia? Or just like in the Matrix, are our minds manipulated to think certain things exist that really don't exist, that are really just figments of our imagination? Will there be a democracy? Will there be a need for a democracy? Will the government, will they have complete control over this new technology? Or will this be in sectors that is regulated by regular people? Who will be controlling it? And the other thing too, I've thought about this. Will only the rich people be allowed to do this? I suspect that if we do technology and we have to get various parts to keep ourselves sustained and alive, it's going to require a whole new technological industry. And I'm sure you have seen now that there are technologies that are readily available today that can artificially produce skin, blood, bone, and other parts of our body, such as livers and kidneys, and that technology prolongs our life. Thinking in those terms too as well, not getting too heady, what effect does that have on longevity? And if there is such thing as an extended life? We have 9 billion people now, I think, living on this planet. How does that affect the lifespan? And will the things that we need to sustain ourselves be diminished because life is eternal and people live indefinitely? Other questions. Of course, I would think that we would probably be creating hybrid races. And what kind of races would they be? And what would they look like? And do we have a choice on how we wish to look? And how will we, at any particular point in our lives, be able to differentiate what is a biological sentient life or what is mechanical and technologically manipulated? Will we become all robotic with little or no remnants of our biological sentient life form existing? These are a lot of questions that I'm asking, but I'm only asking these questions to provoke thought. And I want you to think about it because, you know, these things are going to happen eventually because they're happening now. And here's something. We're always talking about trade deficits, and we're always talking about, you know, manufacturing. I wonder, who's going to be manufacturing these parts? China, Japan, America? It's very, space travel, here's another thing. I'm going to jump to space travel. And I see some advantages in space travel. If in fact we become more bionic and we have this transhumanization, then it will afford us the opportunity to travel to far distant places in the universe. It will allow us to be in a hyper suspended state of sleeping, and we should be able to maintain that for periods of time that will allow us to go to places that we normally couldn't go, because of course, you know, there's biological degeneration of our cells. But if we're made up of steel and wire and copper and God knows what other elements will come to in the future, we can be able to sustain our existence and go further into space. And in the event that should occur, perhaps maybe we'll also have space colonies. Now, they're endeavoring right now, I think it is NASA or our government is endeavoring to go to Mars. You know, this kind of technology would work very well because the people who are going to Mars very soon, I suspect, are not coming back. So they have to sustain themselves. And one of the things that would be necessary in order to sustain themselves is to have an adequate amount of water and food and not physically deteriorate. And if they are able not to have to eat food and can live off some sort of biofuel or electricity or some other form of energy we're not familiar with, they could sustain themselves in far distant planets and live for eons. There's so many repercussions. I'm going to jump backwards just a little bit, and I'm going to think in terms of religion. You know, we have been inundated about religion and religious philosophies and what happens to the Buddha concepts, what happens to the Christ concepts, what happens to the Allah and all the other religions, the Muslim religions. They're all predicated on redemption, salvation, and eternal life. Do those things no longer exist? And morality. Does a machine have morality? And what will be the code of ethics? Do we need a judicial body to judge whether he was guilty because he's a biological entity still, or we have to excuse him now because it's a mechanical device in his heart and it does not feel, it does not palpitate It does not have sentient reasoning. You would imagine, why would this man bring up all these things? Well, I'm bringing them up because this is the evolution of mankind. Mankind eventually will become more mechanized and more of a machine, and he will integrate himself or herself into this sort of technology. And this is the future. This is the future. Transhumanism, where we become more bionic, mechanical, and less sentient biological entities. I can also see some advantages also. Extraterrestrials. If we have the ability to transcend our biological bodies, maybe we might be more aware or acutely aware of other entities that are out there. For instance, the Greys. My understanding that the Greys are biological entities. They're not made up of sentient life. They're made up of chemicals and byproducts in a laboratory. Perhaps we'd have a more or a better affinity being able to communicate with them if, in fact, we were not just biological, but we were on a higher intellectual level because of the vast knowledge that we possess. It's hard to say. We should be able to transmit energy, receive energy, and be a part of energy. There are just so many technologies that I suspect will be happening in the future, and we'll be a part of it. Our kids will see things that we can't even begin to imagine. And being transhuman is a part of our future. It's a part of what society will eventually lead to. Transhumanism. It's something to think about. Wouldn't you agree?
Last year, for the first time in world history, a memory was recorded. We can actually tape record a memory and insert it back into an animal, and it remembers. This is amazing. At Wake Forest University, also in Los Angeles, they took a mouse, trained the mouse to sip water, recorded the memory in the hippocampus right here, small organ that processes memory. The mouse later forgot that. Then they shot the memory back into the mouse, and bingo, the mouse got it the first try. Next will be primates. Perhaps a monkey eating a banana will record that memory and insert it back in. And the short-term goal is to create a brain pacemaker for Alzheimer's patients. In the future, we're going to have millions of people who forget where they live, wander around. Why not have a button? You push the button, and you immediately remember where you live, who you are, who your kids are. And beyond that, who knows? Maybe we'll upload the vacation that you never had.
It seems so mind-blowing to me to consider that memory, which is not a static thing, it's always changing, it's evolving depending on our experiences, can be digitized. It's really mind-blowing. But I want to ask you about something else that you mentioned in the book, the ability for telepathy. And you've actually said in the past that in the future, humans will be able to mentally contact anybody we want, see whatever image we want, and if we don't like it, we can just turn it off.
That's really, in the future, in fact, today, we can get so that you walk into a room, we'll put on a headset, such that you can control the lights, turn on the TV, call for your car, tell your car where to go, type, dictate documents without ever touching a computer screen. And our children will wonder, how could you possibly live in a world where you had to touch the screen and you had a mouse and you had to type? Everybody just thinks and types, makes documents, controls cars.
It's fascinating where we're headed, and it seems like it really is inevitable. And I think a lot is taken for granted over the things that we're already able to do now. I mean, you were just referring to these sensors in the brain that can capture images inside the brain. What are some of the other practical applications that these things could have?
Well, this will replace the internet. It'll become a brain net. We'll record emotions, thoughts, patterns, behavior, and send it on the internet. Teenagers will love it. Can you imagine Facebook? You send emotions, your first date, your first kiss, your first senior prom, all on the internet. Teenagers already put little like happy faces on their emails, right? We're going to be able to record thoughts, and the movies are going to be replaced by the brain net. Movies today are a flat screen with sound. That's the movies, right? In the future, perhaps emotions and feelings will also be conveyed. This is called total immersion entertainment.
It's amazing, and Actually, that reminds me of this new movie that's coming out now, this Johnny Depp movie called Transcendence, where it kind of takes that premise as well, taking your consciousness and uploading it digitally. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, you make it sound like it's going to be a lot of fun, but it also, there's aspects that I think are a little bit terrifying. And I wanted to ask you about this new pill that's being developed that can slow down a person's perception of time. And what's being said is that, this could be applied to prisoners. And given they'll take a pill, it'll slow down the perception of time so that eight hours could feel like 1,000 years, 1,000-year sentence. How would this work, and why does the future sound so terrifying?
Well, we are tinkering with the brain itself. For example, people who have traumatic memories of war, sometimes they're paralyzed with these horrible memories of a rape, an accident, warfare. We can create a forgetful drug that actually takes the edge of many of our most violent and oppressive memories. However, the President's Commission on Bioethics recommended against marketing the forgetful drug because they said that even unpleasant memories are useful. We learn from them. But personally, I think that sometimes some memories are so disastrously awful that they paralyze you. They prevent you from becoming a normal person. And I think we should allow forgetful drugs to be marketed. Also, drugs and therapies which can perhaps even increase intelligence are now being talked about. We'll have perhaps memories that we can upload into the mind, perhaps memories of a job that we're not trained for, or perhaps a college student will upload a course that they flunked in college. We can perhaps increase our intelligence. And now we're also investigating super intelligence, photographic memory. People who memorize everything. They hear a concert, they see a landscape, they can draw the landscape, they can reproduce the entire concert on one try. How is it possible that people have that mind? We not believe that the mind records, but the mind also forgets deliberately. These people, the forget mechanism is broken. They never forget. They have a photographic memory, and we think that some great scientists of the past had this ability, the ability to have access to powers of the mind that we cannot as mortals.
Well, now that we've spoken about some of the general things concerned with transhumanism, I'd like to make it perfectly clear that these are just general statements, general beliefs. You always have to, and I always say that you must discern what you think transhumanization will do for our society. Will it make our society better? Will it make it more complicated? These may not be some of the things that we currently have to contend with or even have to worry about, because we may not very well be here. But since technology has advanced so fast and so far, we see a trend that is taking place where being a machine has its advantages, and also being a machine has a great deal of disadvantage. It removes our humanity from us, and humanity is what we were created as, sentient light beings. Removing that humanity, I think, is critical because we don't know where it takes us. We will be creating new forms of life, hybrid races. And as what I contend is who or whom or what will be controlling this. And that's probably more important than anything else. We have values nowadays that we espouse. There are people who are Buddhist and Christians and Muslims, etc., etc., etc. How will that change our philosophy and the way we view life? We look at most religions as a means and a way of traversing through this very difficult life. We look to religion as a means of salvation, redemption, and a way of us having standards for morality. What happens if we do become transhuman and we're more akin to being non-biological sentient life forms and we're mechanical entities? What does that do to our minds? Instead of us having our cranial lobes opened up and downloading networks and platforms and different levels of data given to our brains. How will that manipulate us? Will it take that compassion that we have, the love that we share as sentient life forms? Will we digress in terms of our humanity for one another and the earth and the planet? Will we become stoic with little or no feelings? What are the repercussions of becoming more technologically advanced? Oh yeah, there won't be any disease, we can eradicate that. People who are blind will be able to see, people who have broken limbs can be repaired. There wouldn't be any heart disease because we can replace the hearts, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys, and just about any part of our physical anatomy. But more importantly, like I said, will it disprove or prove that we are a soul? And for those people who espouse karma and you reap what you sow, all of these platitudes, all of these things that we believe in, all of these things that we espouse as quote unquote spiritual beings, what effect will it have on our society? Do we close down the churches now? We don't need them anymore? It gets complicated, and I'm hesitating because I find that the more I think about it, the more confused I become. So I'm going to leave you with the burden of trying to figure out what advantages or disadvantages transhumanization plays in our society. What role does it play? Is it advantage, disadvantage, or yin and yang, as most things are? I'd like you to express your opinions. Usually before the ending of any show, I always ask that you contact me, and I am open to suggestions and comments and your ideas. I've gotten some pretty profound and very nice comments about some of the shows that I have done, and I do appreciate your feedback, so please contact me. I'm not always available, but if I'm not, it's only because I'm working on a project, but I will definitely respond back to you through the email. You can go to my site. It's called the New World Generation.blogspot.com. I'll repeat that again. The New World Generation.blogspot.com. That's the New World Generation. And we are all a part of this New World Generation. And we must adapt to the New World. It's not the New World Order. You know what? That order has come and has left. And those days are over. Humanity is now coming closer together. We're communicating more. The availability of information and knowledge is readily available. It is and is changing our society. And I look for a brighter future and a brighter day. I thank you for watching this show. We'll be doing quite a few other shows on technologies and things that I think you should be aware of. Thank you for watching Beyond the Beyond. I'm your host, Martin SLADE Jr. Have a good day, and definitely have a good life. Mahalo.